Welcome to the 8th episode of Renegade Thinkers Live, a show that promises to be long on marketing insights and short on overhyped buzzwords. We'll be drinking in the latest tactics and the coolest gin. Yep, this may be the only live marketing show that also features a gin tasting. This show is being live streamed via our friends at Restream, and if you want to drink along at home, today we're tasting Fused Spirits, Breakfast Gin, and Blue Coats American Gin. I'm your host, Drew Neiser, here in my temporary studio in Jupiter, Florida. And as I like to say on my podcast, hello, Renegade Thinkers. If you're a fan of my show, you know I preach a lot about the need for CMOs to recognize employees as a primary target audience. In my next book, Chapter 7 is titled Engage Employees First and offers numerous examples of how companies like AppsFlyer and ParkMobile are creating an army of advocates who eagerly speak about their employer to just about anyone who will listen. This advocacy not only helps new customer acquisition with that, but also makes recruiting new employees that much easier. In a recent interview with Ron Avrahami, CMO of AppsFlyer, a company that has grown to over 1,000 employees from 12 in 7 years, Ron mentioned that the company has two guiding principles. Does the action generate pride among employees, and is it good for our customers? Interestingly, Ron mentioned that both of these principles helped AppsFlyer navigate through the challenges of the pandemic. On this show, we're going to explore three big challenges. How do you recruit the right employees? How do you build a strong employee-first culture? And how do you continue to develop and train your employees? To address the first question, please welcome Caroline Tien-Spalding, CMO of Aptology and star of episode 214 of Renegade Thinkers Unite. Hello, Caroline.
Hi, Drew. Hi, everyone.
How are you doing?
Doing well and about to do better with our two lovely, we call it gin tasting, but I don't know if you guys have seen the size of tasting we've been sent here. Yeah, this is one. Here's another.
I tried to explain to Jeff, you don't have to drink it all. This is a tasting. And somehow or other, this feels appropriate to the topic, and I don't know exactly how, but I know you spend a lot of time at the intersection of technology and HR. So Let's talk about recruitment and how companies are overcoming the challenges of hiring employees right now virtually.
Yeah, the vast majority of recruiting right now has at least one, if not multiple, remote elements to it. And that means, technology is now helping with quite a bit of the recruiting process. We see it across the enterprise, but in revenue generating centers, whether that's sales or marketing, we see it a lot more. So what's interesting is, the tech stack has changed quite a bit on that side. And so now you have a vested interest in the business units, the business side of things to really come together with HR. It's no longer, I think a lot of the silos are breaking down. That's what's really interesting about what's happening right now.
So we've got some, hang on a second. Melissa, are we still good technically? Okay, I'm just good. We're good. That's an exciting thing about a live stream show. You just never know exactly what's going to happen. But so as we think about this balance, how do we sort of make sure right now, and what role, in fact, do you see the CMO playing in all of this, in this bridge between tech and HR and recruiting the right people?
Yeah, I think there's definitely an intersection, right? You have HR that's really looking at the entire employee population, but a rising concern is even the employee branding, right? And you refer to that in Chapter 7 of your book, and the role that marketing plays in conjunction with HR there. But what's really interesting when you're looking at the CMO's role is that we, like salespeople, we know more about our prospects than we do sometimes our own employees. And that, I think, is fundamentally going to change across the business. Wanting to really understand your employees and doing so remotely is really rising in importance. And that's because when you have the right employee in the right seats, in 90+% of the cases, your revenue goes up. So there's a very high incentive to make sure that happens. And people are starting to understand better how. And you have multiple pieces that come into it. And HR has done an extremely heavy lift in trying to identify, source the right talent from a very wide pool of talent, and then making sure that they move through and have a good experience all the way past onboarding even. But what you're getting now is people really paying attention to the people side of things, and tying it to objective behaviors. And I think that's CMOs are prime for that, because we understand people, we understand prospects, we want to understand our own. And a lot of us are really revenue driven. And so being able to tie that to objective metrics, I think that's really what's happening right now in the space.
It's so interesting. And there's a lot to break down in that. A couple of things I think of. One of the things that you mentioned is CMOs know more about their prospects than they do their employees. I totally agree. Is one of the things why I love when CMOs drive employee surveys as part of it. But I think you also hit on an important reason why a lot of CMOs don't, is they're getting paid based on driving revenue. And if that's your focus and you don't think about it, the role that employees play in driving revenue, you're not going to spend any time on employee communications. Anyway, I'm not here to preach. I am here to ask questions. So how do we use technology? Maybe I'm here to preach, to get the right people in the right seats, because that's part of this, right? It's not just hiring the right people, but it's making sure that they're in the right place. What's the state of the art with that right now?
Well, I think it's going to sound counterintuitive, but you have to start inside. So understanding the people side of thing and how it relates to objective metrics, really understanding those two pieces is the foundation of everything. And, historically, you've either known about candidates and their background, or people have had their own empirical experience, right? If you're an early manager, it's maybe a handful of people that you know. If you're more seasoned, maybe dozens of people. Later on in your career, it could be maybe up to a few hundred people that you know in your network. But then trying to understand, okay, what about this is really driving revenue is the first piece of the equation. So you're having more and more companies understand that they have to start looking inside and getting those two pieces to match. And after that, using that as a building block to be able to understand which people fit in what seats from the outside and from the inside.
Got it. Okay. I think I have it. All right. Well, let's bring on our next guest, Tanika Vital-Pringle. Tanika and I met when you were at Shell running the polymer division. And I remember we were about ready to have a conversation about that. And then you decided to go and pursue your own entrepreneurial dream, founding brand Rebirth. So first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's nice. Congratulations on getting brand Rebirth off the ground.
Thank you. Thank you.
And how are things in Houston? I know Texas is really feeling it right now.
Things are very different right now, but we're safe. I'm safe. My family's safe. We have some loss of power issues and things of that nature, but it's on the mend, I think. It's on the mend. Thanks for asking.
Well, I was talking to a CMO who's based in Austin, and, they're saying that, they have to pool resources just to get to the grocery store.
Oh, yeah.
It's
online everywhere. Yeah.
It's really, now I didn't mean this show to become the Weather Channel, but it is. The fact is Texas is experiencing something that you really never had, which is.
And we're not prepared to have, 15-degree weather, snow. It's very, very different. But I lived on the East Coast, so I'm accustomed to it, but I'm not accustomed to how we're having to respond to it from an infrastructure standpoint.
Yeah, it's so interesting. All right, well, back to the topic at hand. So congratulations on the launch of Rebirth U, your virtual learning university for brand and professional development. How's it going?
It's going really great. It's a really exciting time for Rebirth U, because Rebirth U is focused on helping organizations level up their brand know-how and impact through virtual learning options. And so I've been doing some reading, and I was happy to hear this confirmation type of quote from the Stanford Institute International, but that basically says that 75% of long-term job success actually depend on soft skills mastery, and not necessarily on the technical skills, which represent the 25%. So this is why Learning programs like Rebirth You, which is a part of Brand Rebirth, is great for marketing teams. It's a great fit for CMOs when thinking about their teams, D&I programs, corporate training programs, and more. But what I'd like to say is that when I was on my role as the head of brand for Shell Polymers, which is a Royal Dutch Shell company, I had the opportunity of attending Columbia University's executive education program on brand leadership. And it was great. We covered great topics like employer branding, customer experience, and more. But, quite honestly, it was just not priced for everyone. I was fortunate to be able to go and to attend, but not everyone is able to physically do that. So when you can provide options for your employees to level up their branding at a lower cost, it can serve as a win-win for everyone.
And I totally agree. And anytime you can help your employees just expand as humans. I know you know this from your how important employees are to the rollout of, say, a new brand or a new positioning. Is if employees don't believe in the promise or the articulation of the brand purpose, there's no way it's really going to stick. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, when you instruct companies on rebirthing their brands, how do you make sure they are engaging employees first?
Well, I definitely am very strong on encouraging companies, large or small, to create brand evangelists and to build a brand from the inside out. And Carolyn touched on this as well. We tend to focus externally and then think about our employees, afterwards. But it's very important to instill principles like brand love, helping individuals to love the brand and helping companies establish things that I call brand roots. And when I refer to brand roots, I'm referring to developing an awareness and strong core values and other things like your purpose statement, your pre-vision statement, or your vision statement. It's important, and what's more important is helping your employees embrace and embody these behaviors and motivate the organization to achieve its goals. Rebirth You has a module called Brand Roots where I coach on all of these topics. So that's what's really great. Another thing is that employees need to be empowered with brand education so that they can better assist CMOs, VPs, leaders across different functions. And so master classes like brand authenticity help employees become more authentic, but also what's most important is that they can take that personal authenticity and imbue it into the organization, because authentic brands are more profitable brands.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting is how people, when you've done it right, employees not only embrace the brand, but they make it their own, and there's a way for them to do it. I think that's particularly true for B2B brands. Anyway, it's time to bring on Jeff Perkins, who is the CMO of ParkMobile. Jeff joined me episode 171 of Renegade Thinkers Unite, and we spent a lot of time talking about employee engagement. Now, that was pre-pandemic. So, but Jeff and I spoke, so episode 171, right? And it was called Unlocking Employee Optimism. So Jeff, the last time we spoke, there was a lockdown pretty much across the country that was creating all sorts of challenges for your business overall, and of course for your employees. How are things now?
Yeah, those were, we had some dark days early on. In our business, we make money when people park, and if everything's shut down and no one's parking, we don't make any money. So it was a very challenging time overall. And you'll have to excuse my dogs in the background. I'm still working from home, obviously, so you'll hear them from time to time. But it really forced us as a company to get a lot smarter with how we did virtually everything when it came to employee engagement. Because if everyone's working from home, everything was shifting online, how do you still keep a vibrant culture? Because we were all used to being together all the time and doing these team lunches and big events and everything. And it was amazing. In January, right before everything kind of fell apart, we were at State Farm Arena here in Atlanta where the Hawks play for our company kickoff meeting. We did it at State Farm Arena. We had almost 200 employees there. And it was amazing. We did the meeting for a full day, and then we went to to watch the game at night. And we just did our company kickoff meeting last week on Zoom. And it was a very different kind of company kickoff meeting. But what you have to do as a leader is say, all right, what are the things that we have to take from what was a physical world and then transfer them into the virtual world? So for the company kickoff meeting, for example, we knew we couldn't get people on Zoom for an entire day. So we said, okay, let's chunk it up into about 4 hours over 2 days. So 2 hours on Wednesday and 2 hours on Thursday. So we shortened it. We streamlined the content. And how do we make it fun and engaging if we're not in person? Well, we did things like bringing in, Cameo, where you can get the videos made. We had a bunch of cameos made with all these random celebrities like Bob Saget and Carol Baskin and Tony Hawk wishing well to the ParkMobile team. So so if you were sitting there watching the meeting, you'd be like, wow, this is really like a cool virtual event. And we had a theme, and we didn't half-ass it. We really treated it like we would have treated the in-person event. We took it very seriously, and we really came out of the 2 days with what we felt was a very successful event overall. But we've done other things beyond just the big meeting. So we can't do bring your kids to work day in person anymore, so we do it virtually. And we have all the parents bring their kids onto Zoom, and we did an arts and crafts contest, and we picked a winner, and the winning arts and crafts participant actually got their design on a ParkMobile shirt. Cool. We've just kept the cadence of events going. We now do all hands meetings every other week, right? That used to be a once a month. Now it's every other week. So our learning was that it just requires a lot more effort and a lot more consistent communication to really keep the culture where you want it to be. You can't just pretend like when you're in the virtual world that you're in the real world. You have to course correct. You really have to adjust the way you do everything to make it appropriate for a virtual environment.
Yeah, and what I love about all of those examples on our podcast, you were rattling off so many different cool things that you were doing. I loved it. One of the things that I've borrowed a lot is your innovation days, where you had these teams come together to cook up big ideas in a competitive arena. Were you able to extend those to a virtual?
We actually we actually did it last year, but it was right before COVID. And now we have it actually coming up next month. So towards the end of March, we're going to do our virtual innovation week. And so it's 5 full business days where we give our employees off. So this is going to be an interesting one. But I actually think our team has gotten very good at working remotely. And one of the amazing things that happened last year, which we didn't expect, was that our developers in many ways got just a lot more productive. What we found is that actually, engineers always complained about being in the office, and as an executive team was like, that's just how they are. They of course they want to work in a dark room in their apartment or in their home. But when we actually had to work at home, the engineers proved that they were really good at working from home. They were really good at working remotely. And so we got last year, the things we did as a company last year, we did a data center migration or data warehouse migration. We did a data center migration from on-premise to the cloud with AWS. Huge transformative projects that, in a normal time would have been really hard. Now we're doing them all virtually, but our team just performed at such a high level. Plus we pumped out tons of innovation. So, our team really proved to us that they're in many ways probably more productive working from home. And that's going to influence probably how we restructure when eventually we do open the office back up and we get back to some semblance of normalcy. We're probably never going to go back to a pure 5 days a week in the office anymore.
Right. Oh, it's fascinating. And a part of it, to me, it totally makes sense. You had such a strong employee first culture to begin with. All right. Well, let's bring everyone back now. And I'm going to ask one other person. Hey, Alexa, what is employee marketing?
Here's something I found on the web. According to cleverreach.com, Employee marketing is also always about appreciation, motivation, and employee retention.
Right. Well, what do we think of that?
Alexa's always right.
Limiting. There's so much more to it.
Okay, well then let's go there. What did she miss?
Well, so Tanika, I think, really highlighted well that it's one thing to have mission and vision, but you want to understand, behavior, how people are going to, carry it out every day. And then Jeff talked about advocacy. So your employees also becoming an extension of your marketing team. And I didn't hear that in Alexa's definition.
The evangelism component.
Evangelism, yes.
The brand evangelism component.
And that's right. Yeah, I'm so with you there. And what's interesting, and if we have any CEOs or senior executives listening in one way or another, one of the questions they're going to sort of start to think about, okay, how does this all add up? And so, Jeff, you went through a very difficult period of time. And I'm curious, as you look to, you obviously had productivity, you've already spoken to that, but how do you think the strong employee culture and all the nurturing that you had done sort of help to pay out during a crisis? We don't ever anticipate having one, but it feels like it must have made a huge difference.
Yeah, and I go back to a lot of what Tanika said in regards to the kind of the vision and the core values of your company, and making those not just things that you put on a wall, but making them actually part of the culture. And we have 6 core values at ParkMobile. People are hired based on those core values, fired based on those core values, promoted based on those core values. And actually, when we just finished up our annual performance reviews, and the core values are an important part of how we evaluate employees. And so when you have a strong foundation like that, and your employees clearly understand what your core values are, essentially what you stand for as a business, it actually, you get a lot. It sets you up to succeed even in tough times, because one of our core values is support our people, support our community, and we take that very seriously in our philanthropic work. We take it very seriously if employees are having hard times, and we rally around them. We take it seriously as far as, we're an Atlanta-based company. We want to be part of the community here. And, when things kind of happened during the summer with George Floyd, the natural tendency of the company was not to not talk about it, but it actually was to come together around it and to look at what are we doing to promote diversity, and what are we doing to celebrate our differences. And it wasn't like executives telling people what to do or what to believe. It was employees standing up and saying, hey, we need to do something about this. We need to really be the change we want to see in the world. And that's been a really high impact part of our business during COVID, where we've seen an employee activism that has really been incredible. In fact, a lot of our employees right now, they're for Black History Month, we have activities almost on a weekly basis. So we have, I think they're doing a watch party right now for Black Panther. Every day there's a post in the Slack channel about someone from the Black community who means something to one of our employees. And so, I think a lot of what's happened during COVID is you're seeing employees come together in an unprecedented way. And the reason that's happened is everything to do with setting a strong foundation of core values that everyone believes in, everyone buys into, and we live them in our culture on a daily basis.
A lot to unpack there. I want to bring in a question. We have someone from the audience, calls herself Black Woman in Artificial Intelligence, and it says, do you love your company's brand, and how do you advocate, evangelize for your brand during difficult times? Anybody want to, Caroline or Tanika, do you want to tackle that one?
I think
Sure.
Tanika, great. Yes, I want to hear from you.
So do you love your company's brand during difficult times? Well, you will love your company's brand if your company's brand is doing the things that Jeff just mentioned. So they're building up that emotional capital, and they are living their values. And if you've joined the company and you've embraced their values, that means you've bought into the brand and you're not buying the brand, even as an employee. So you live that brand and that you're one with that brand. So during difficult times, you support the brand because you're one with the mission, which is what the company does. You support the vision, which is a futuristic view of what the company wants to achieve, and you embrace the guiding principles or the core values. And if the company is smart enough to have a purpose, and if you've embraced the purpose, you know your why, your reason for existence, and you bought into that. And that is weaved into your work and you're into your elevator speech. And if anyone asks you why you work for that company beyond just needing the paycheck, you have a strong response. So it's easy to advocate, you know, the brand during difficult times, particularly when there's political unrest or, you know, different things going on in the social, political, and economic landscape. If you work for a company that you support, and if you are living and working on purpose, it obviously makes it a lot easier. And if you have tried, and if you were just a simple brand advocate, that's great. But if you become a brand evangelist as an employee, it means you're telling everyone about the company you work for. Just like, let's say Zappos is a great example. You know, when, you know, everyone was excited to work for Zappos and they had a really strong employee culture. And I hope that they still do, despite, you know, the death of their CEO. So those are some ways that you can kind of survive. Your brand can survive during difficult times.
What she said, but I want to add a little bit to that, and I'm a brand that I love and I'm passionate about. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about it. This is a plug for CMO Huddles, and it was launched in 2020. CMO Huddles is an invitation-only subscription service that brings together an elite group of CMOs to share, care, and dare each other to greatness. One CMO described a huddle as a cross between an expert workshop and a therapy session. So who you are in there, does that sound about right for is that the experience?
That's been my experience as an advisor on CMO Huddle. I think one of the difficulties, right, of the C-suite is, you know, the amount of responsibility that you have towards your employees. You know, there are children out there that know your name that you've never met. And so with that responsibility, you want to be able to understand, you know, where am I steering the ship next and why? And so having a group of peers where you can have these discussions, both in terms of the strategy, the implications, and the latest, right? We all are trying different things, and being able to be, you know, it's like, I think somebody said, and I don't know who it is, you know, a smart person learns from their mistakes, a wise person learns from other people's mistakes. There's great value in the CMO Huddle. You become wiser.
I love it. Well, thank you. So anyway, if you're a B2B CMO that can share, care, and dare with the best of them, visit cmohuddles.com. Okay, well, it is time. It's really time, I think, for us to go taste some gin. So we're going to take a quick 30-second break. There's a video for you while I go to the freezer and grab my glasses in the gin. So Melissa, roll the video.
So we will get that schedule revised and sent right out to you, sir.
That sounds good. Listen, I should be back in the office on Tuesday. I'd like to see an updated P&L.
Very good, sir. Yeah. We're all over it. Not a problem. Take care.
That was close. Yeah, it was close.
I can still hear you. I think we're good. Yeah, that should do it. I think we're good.
FedEx, proudly bringing you the FedEx Cup.
All right, so now the first gin that we are going to be tasting here is from Few Spirits, and I better show it. It's backwards here. Few Spirits. My bottle is very cold because I put it in the freezer. Let me tell you a little bit about Few Spirits. Try it. First of all, this is the first time I've heard of an idea which is targeting the brunch crowd with a cocktail making gin. And to drive that idea home, this gin includes Earl Grey tea as a botanical, along with some other that I'm going to ask the folks to see if they can taste it. So, Jeff, Caroline, give this a taste and let me know which of the botanicals you can taste here.
Yeah, I didn't freeze mine like you.
I froze mine.
I should have done that.
Ooh!
I love this smell. Just on this smell. Really different.
Yeah, totally get the tea. Oh my gosh. It's like,
Yeah.
wow.
I could see that
that's,
in a French 75. I'm talking
Wow.
about brunch, right?
Yeah.
So
Now, is it a breakfast tea because it's lower proof than the other one? Is that why it's a breakfast tea?
it is a little lower proof. It's 42% instead of 40%.
oh.
But look at the, I mean, they're pushing the tea part. I don't know if you're supposed to put a tea. I don't think so. So,
No.
Obviously every gin you have to be able to taste the juniper. Any other botanicals that you two can taste?
I feel like I should have done my homework.
Little lemon, maybe? All right. Well,
do
here's
that, yes.
one of the botanicals is bergamot. And Abby, our intern, what the heck is bergamot? Are you there?
Oh, we see her, but we're her.
Uh-oh. Okay. Well,
It's a lip reading exercise in addition to the gin.
all right. Well,
we can hear you
now.
Beautiful. So bergamot oil is used to turn black tea into Earl Grey tea.
That's what
it comes from the aromatic skin of bergamot orange, excuse me. Fun fact, this orange is not actually orange though. It's a dark green with a bumpy texture and sour taste.
All right.
Really?
Well, that's cool. Thank you. That was awesome. All right.
I think that's totally accurate. I definitely get the English black tea smell, like that, the 5 o'clock, or actually it's breakfast tea for a lot of people. But yeah, that's unique smell from even loose tea leaves you definitely get here.
It's very,
very cool. Any comments? What do you think, Jeff?
No, it's great. It's very smooth gin. Goes down really well. Nice and yeah, like Caroline said, I mean, it tastes like tea.
It does taste like tea, but not it's not like you're drinking a tea bag. You're drinking a well-formed cup of tea. It's
the smoothness of it. A really well steeped tea has that smooth kind of like feel to it. It's got that.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I feel like I have to get some recipes for this. Maybe we'll have to share them in the show notes, but I feel like this is a gin that I want to add stuff to. I don't know what yet.
I want to try French 75 for a brunch. So that's champagne, I believe, gin, and there's a third ingredient, and I never know what it is because it's just delicious. Let me see.
All right.
Yeah.
Now we're going to move on because this whole show isn't about it. So now we have a different gin, which is Blue Coat gin. And let me just get my notes on that. So Blue Coat is an American dry gin. And as many of you know, there are essentially 4 different types of gin. One of them being London dry gin, another one being American dry gin, another one being an Old Tom's. And there's one other category that I'm missing right now. But so Blue Coat, by the way, launched in 2006 at the very beginning of the gin renaissance in Philadelphia. And this distillery was the first craft distillery to open in Pennsylvania since before Prohibition. That is a cool little fact. Okay, now let's see how we do with this one. Oh.
Very different smell, right?
Now this is more traditional gin.
Much more traditional. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Ooh, I taste a lot of definitely like lemons in here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really the citrus,
so
the citrus peel. Evidently they use a citrus peel that's not found in most gins. And that peel comes through, doesn't it?
Yeah. That's a GNT classic right here. That's the smell I expect out of a GNT.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it has that strong juniper finish that you expect from a gin, but it does definitely go that peel pushes it in a direction that you're not used to going. Okay. Fun fact, this gin is distilled in a custom built copper pot with organic juniper berries. Any other comments? Jeff, Caroline?
I'm waiting for Jeff to finish the bottle like he said he was going to.
I know he promised on LinkedIn earlier that he would finish, but all right, I know that I won't be able to finish the show if I finish these
really
drinks.
smooth.
So, okay, thank you. First, thank you, Few Spirits, for this fabulous breakfast gin, and thank you, Blue Coat. I'm sorry you can't see the bottle very well because mine is frozen, but it's a beautiful bottle and a lovely gin. All right. Okay, let's get back to the show. We are almost 12 months into the pandemic, and a lot of employees are kind of burned out on Zoom calls in general. I know that depression rates are up, they're skyrocketing, and just the challenges that we have living and working in this thing of way they've worked. I'm wondering what kinds of things do you see companies doing? And Jeff, you've already talked a lot about this, but this is a hard mental health time that can't be really denied. And I'm curious, you can't be rah all the time. What do you guys think of that in this? How do you balance that need to be sympathetic and keep people off of Zoom, and still try to build culture or keep culture alive?
I think you need multiple elements, right? So, for one thing, what we've seen is we provide companies with help understanding behavior even remotely. So trying to understand your employees individually, I think that was one big lesson from last year, as opposed to like a more generic, peanut buttered approach. So are, some people more collaborative? How do they approach goals? How do they react to stress? Once you understand these things and how they're different for each person, then I think a lot of people, I've seen incredible and very creative ways of solving some of these problems. Some people, I read were sending DoorDash to the families where at least one person was going to the office, right, to help lighten the load. So HubSpot, I believe the CPO had organized a reading hour for children. So if you're a parent, you can have your kid in front of, the computer, but they're entertained for a little bit and you're not necessarily the entertainment. So I thought that was really creative on the parenting side, for example. It's not ideal. It's not daycare, but it's a relief for an hour, or entertainers coming through. But I think at the core, really understanding how people are different is where it starts. And that's why I really love some of the examples, both from Tanika and Jeff on that.
Yeah, one of the things that I was really impressed when I interviewed Stephanie Buscemi from, recently, who left Salesforce, how much they invested in employee health. And once they were doing that, they realized, wait, it's everybody's health. Let's do that. How does that fit into your world, Tanika?
Well, I just wanted to add, I think now as a result of the pandemic here in the United States, at least we'll start transitioning from becoming known as a nation that's focused on living to work and transitioning to working to live. Because, we are workaholics, we're very productive and successful. But I think because of the pandemic, we all have to stop and think about self-care, mental health, mental survival, as well. And I think as a result of that, I think employer branding should speak to that and maybe partner more so, with these employee assistance programs. But definitely a focus on self-care, and relating that to helping employees becoming more authentic, being able to show up as themselves and not having to code switch so much when they get to work, depending on their ethnicities, their cultures, or just who they are. I think this year is the time to think about that, and it is my hope that employers will be able to do that and create the space for their employees to show up as their true authentic selves.
I'll add one thing to that. I think the thing early on during COVID, one thing we noticed is that nobody was taking a day off because everyone, and which is really hard because everyone's like, well, I'm working from home. I have a lot of flexibility. And I can't go anywhere. So I'm not going to take vacation. And we had to really push employees to take mental health days, to take, even if they can't do a vacation, just to take some time, go clean your closets, go read a book, just do something other than work. And because employees, they kind of were getting into this mindset, well, I need to be on all the time. And you know, as a culture, as a company, I mean, it's hard because we have Slack and we have Zoom, and you could be in a meeting or Slacking or emailing all day. And so we really had to force employees to take breaks and tell them, hey, there's nothing punitive about it. There's no punitive things that are going to happen if you take a couple days off here or there, take a Friday off, take a Wednesday off. We also instituted, and we haven't been great about it, but I think it's helped, no meeting days. And so like every Wednesday should be a no meeting day for my team, where we try to get, you know, emails answered. It just, you know, it clears out the calendar, and we actually block off that day as out of office, right? And so people can't schedule meetings on that day. And so it's those kind of things that you wouldn't have thought about doing probably in the pre-COVID world, that now you really have to be aware that you're going to burn your employees out if they're on Zoom calls 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, every day, and just answering Slack messages all day. So we really try to enforce, like, it's not enforcing being in the office, it's actually enforcing not being in the office and not working.
Well, and that's such a good point. By the way, Melissa, our producer, would you note that Renegade needs to do that? We need to have a no meeting day. But there's also this dynamic that because we're home and because we have our home life, we're working really weird hours too. And sometimes we're working all hours. And so I think your point, Tanika, is really well taken. But it's a challenge. And part of the challenge is, because we're not physically together, I suspect that there's a lot more paranoia that, gee, what's my boss really think, right? Because if you're communicating via email and Slack, which are very cold medium, you could very easily misinterpret an email, and you could be worried, oh my God, my boss hates me, kind of thing, right? So that was part one. And then part two of this thing is CMOs leading by example. So Jeff, how much, or Caroline, how much time have you taken off lately?
Oh man, that's a trick question to be asking me. I actually did take quite a bit of time off last year. My dad was on ventilator for a while, and so my company was very supportive very early on in the pandemic and gave me a lot of time to deal with that and with school closures. So as a result, lately, you know, maybe I'm over-indexing a little bit, but was really given the flexibility when it mattered. And I think that's part of the approach, is really catering to each individual need.
That's a amazing story. Is he okay?
Yeah. So after a week, he got out of the coma, and he was one of 9 people who made it out of that room. It took him about 3 months to relearn how to breathe and talk and walk. But I'm very happy that we got to celebrate his birthday the day before Christmas, and that was my Christmas present for the year. And I'm just super, super lucky that he's made it out just without any consequences after that.
Wonderful.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing.
But I think it's a focus, right? To your point, it's, you know, we do need to lead by example. And I'm Tanika, I'm sure launching a new company in the middle of all of this, you've probably gone into a little bit of overdrive. But focusing on what matters in terms of behaviors, right? What are the ones that move the needle? I think we need to know that for ourselves and for our employees. And that's what I really loved about both of your comments earlier on. The focus on the few behaviors that move the needle, and catering to what matters to individuals, right? Maybe more leeway is better for one person, and maybe more clearer communication, more frequent communication is better for another. And I think our relationship to each other is going to change after this. And I think that's what I love that you're enabling that, Tanika, right? We really need so much more of that.
Thank you. Yes, yes. It's different.
This is the point in the show which seems completely random unless you know me and my obsession with Ben Franklin. But it is the moment when I like to ask, when we ask, what would Ben Franklin say? And here's what I think he would say: a right heart exceeds all. And I feel like we've been talking about that a lot here, is that as much as we want to be professionals who need to drive our business forward, we can only do that with the people, and we can only get there if our heart is in the right place. And so thank you, Ben, for joining us today with that little pearl of wisdom. Now, we're going to take a really sort of extreme pivot from there. And I don't think you can talk about work cultures today without talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and the changes that companies that need to make. And Jeff, you spoke about what you needed, what was going on at ParkMobile. And I'm just, and Tanika, you mentioned code switching, and let's talk about what you're seeing in this area and the leadership that marketers are taking or CMOs are taking in this area. Who wants to jump in?
Well, it is my hope that CMOs and those in positions of authority will be able to look at contracting and hiring diverse firms, women-owned firms that have physical disabilities, ethnic diversity, not necessarily just only focusing on employees. You need to focus on both. And when I was in that position and I had to hire 11 agencies to employ about 50 different individuals to help with the launch of a major brand, I really, felt horrible that it was just not set up in the system for me to hire from as many diverse firms as I'd like to, let's just say that, for various reasons. It takes time. And so if you're in a position to do so, it can definitely help your company show up in a better way, a different way. And it can also be, encouraging, for your internal employees as well. So, my point is diversity, yes, internally with your employees, all types of diversity, but definitely when you think about contracting and thinking about different suppliers as well.
So I want to ask, I'm going to put Caroline and Jeff on the spot. And when you think about the employees, your employees, is there code switching going on, or can they really be their real selves?
I mean, our company is all about that. So I don't know if I would notice, if I would know right away if somebody was code switching. I mean, people are so good at it, at catering, and especially in marketing, you're so good at catering to your audience, or in sales, you're so good at catering to your audience that it's not always visible. Our core mission is really to drive through really catering to the behaviors and the one that matters to move the needle. And when you do that, you open up the talent pool. So it's really core to what we do to try to align. First, identify what is it that you're looking for so that you can go look for it based on that, based on when move the needle, and not on everything else that's used to de-risk. When, in large companies, you have agency lists because it's a way of de-risking, right? The choice of agency that you will make. People go into their networks not because, they're really just only intent on like hiring their friends necessarily. I mean, I'm sure some small number of people are, but a lot of people do it unintentionally, and it's because they're trying to de-risk. So, that's core to what we do, and we dog food, right? It's about the behaviors that really move the needle, and then you can really open up the world of talent to that contractor or full-time. I love that you highlight that, Tanika. I think there's a large shadow organizations of contractors that probably feel a little bit left behind, and a more consistent approach to what works, and helping managers who are well-intended but are not executing on the vision and mission of getting the best talent possible right now. I think helping them through that more systematically is going to really move the needle.
And could I just interject, because Carolyn made a good point. So in terms of code switching, because I want to make sure I really answer your question, Drew, when companies, regardless of size, have individuals in positions of leadership that don't look like the mainstream, that really helps. Because for me, for example, I don't feel like I have to code switch. I feel like I don't have to, speak in a certain way or act in a certain way, because I know that the individual fully accepts me. Or even if the person does not look like me in the position of power, individuals don't feel like they have to code switch if that person is really open and really inclusive and allows the person to show up. And that's why authenticity is so important. And it's why it's such an issue in most organizations, because people generally don't feel comfortable in showing up as themselves if they are in the minority.
Yeah, I think for us, and we're a smaller company, so we don't have some of the challenges large enterprises have with this, but we put a lot of focus on people being their true selves at work and celebrating that. And we do a lot of activities around, people at Lunch and Learn sharing their hobbies, sharing stories, doing happy hours where people are kind of, exposing them, or exposing who they are more than maybe in other organizations. And some are comfortable with it. Some aren't totally comfortable with it. But I think all in all, it's been a good thing because, when we hire people, we want to hire the person, and we want real people. We don't want just 9-to-5ers who are there to build code and go home at the end of the day. We want people that are kind of part of our tribe, and we want people who wear the gear and are proudly wearing our swag, and so that kind of creates a culture. We're also in Atlanta, which is a highly diverse city, and we're very aware of that as a team. And I would even say, we're not nearly as diverse at the executive level as we should be, or we would want to be. But we are very diverse as a company, and so it's all about how do we celebrate that diversity? How do we support our employee base and make sure that everyone feels like ParkMobile is a home for them, no matter what race, religion, gender they are. So it's, and if that's how you operate, people see that and they like that and appreciate it. And then they feel they can actually bring their true selves to work because they will be supported. And, it's interesting. We do this thing called a playlist for life. So every month we like 10 employees basically build a playlist in Spotify. And then we have a lunch and learn, and each employee explains why that song is important to them. And awesome. It's been one of the, it's probably one of the most emotional things I've ever done in an office environment, where you get everything from stories about people being bullied growing up to losing a loved one to just like, this was my wedding song and it's important to me. And it really is amazing when you have a culture where people will share things like that and be vulnerable and know that that vulnerability won't be judged, but will be celebrated and will bring them closer to the community that they're in.
Yeah, what a great share. What a great tip. I'm so glad you shared that story. One of the things that is, as we start to think about the future, post-pandemic future, one of the things that's so interesting to me is, we used to all have backgrounds, right? But now we don't. It doesn't even, whatever, because we don't want a fake thing. We want people to say, wherever you are, if there's a kid in the picture, great, bring them in. What's her name, right? And that, to me, is a wonderful change that has happened, and that the days of the all business leader are over. I'm wondering, as we start to wrap up the show, do you see what changes that happened during the pandemic that were forced upon us? Do you see as going to be living with us beyond the pandemic, and what's going to go back to the way it was, if anything? Nice, easy question. Just what's the future? What's the future? Come on,
well,
Caroline.
I'll think from an employer branding standpoint, employers will hinge on empathy and actions. And I think that's been the theme that we're talking about, showing up as yourselves, being authentic, self-care. I don't think that will die away. And obviously, like Jeff and Carolyn, we all know the transition to remote work will continue. There might be a hybrid solution, but definitely that's not going away.
Yeah, and I every CMO that I talk to, it's interesting. They're having different approaches because, again, it depends on your workforce and your mix. Like developers, they might be happy never coming back to the office. Marketing people, salespeople, they can't wait to get back. Under 30, they can't wait to get back. So a lot of this, and whereas a lot of CMOs I talk to, they're fine not commuting to the office. So again, interesting. I hope that trust increases. Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. We just got a comment on the show. I do think you're right. I hope that trust increases. I think companies have to earn trust, and they have to earn trust with employees. And that's really what we're talking about with all of this, at least on my show, is that you earn trust through your actions, right? And if we focus on employees and we build an employee first culture, those actions are going to resonate and build trust. So, and you're right, you have to trust that your employees will do their job. God, this is great. Write my script for me. She's doing amazing. Okay, so last tips. I want each of you to come up with a tip for not just marketers, but leaders out there in terms of building, in 2021, post-pandemic. Let's talk about an employee first culture. Give one tip that you would recommend leaders acknowledge, live by. Go ahead. Jeff, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think probably the thing that most leaders need to make sure they're doing is empowering their people to really create that culture and stand back and let that culture grow. I think what I've seen when leaders try to impose the culture they want on an organization, it usually doesn't work. But really to have the organization and the employees build the culture from the ground up and to embrace that culture, I think is what leaders really need to do going forward.
Perfect. Okay. And Tanika, your tip.
I would say having a strong employee brand program. I did this at Shell and I'm helping companies. This can mean a myriad of things. Jeff, you've mentioned a number of things. Like I love the playlist idea, but the program can consist of fireside chats. It can consist of panel discussions, fun things, but keeping it going. Employer branding is something that, is a daily thing. So finding ways for employees to stay authentic and become authentic through having an employer branding program is the way to go.
Awesome. Okay, Caroline.
I'll piggyback on what Tanika said earlier. I think connecting the dots between your mission and vision and the behaviors that are driving business is going to be really critical. So do you have the tools to be able to identify that and carrying it all throughout? And if not, take a look at how you can do that. How can you identify what matters and what moves the needle to do, and consistently, right? Not just people's impressions of it. So I would say focus on the behaviors that drive really your business, your vision, your mission.
And I love that. And it's such a great place for me to just sort of, you have to have those things. And, a lot of companies during the pandemic built their digital infrastructure. They took care of some projects. Jeff mentioned those. I think other companies could have used, and there's still a little bit of time, use that time to rebuild your brand purpose and really take a chance, because when you come back, there is an opportunity. There's so many hugs to be given, and they want to hug your brand. And if you don't make it easy to hug your brand, you're missing a huge opportunity. And hugging your brand is about creating a brand that is empathetic. I'm going to use that word. So thank you, Tanika, Caroline, Jeff. You're all really good sports. Thank you, Far North Spirits, for your amazing breakfast gin, and to Blue Coat for your American Dry Gin. And thank you, audience, for staying with us. Please join us in 2 weeks when we'll be talking about organizational design with Anna Griffith, Katie Johnson, and Melanie Marcus. You can cue the music. Renegade Thinkers Live is produced by Melissa Caffrey. Our interns are Abby and Charlotte. For show notes and past episodes, please visit renegade.com, home to quite possibly the savviest B2B marketing agency in New York City. I'm your host, Drew Neiser, and until next time, keep those Renegade thinking caps on and strong.